final speaker tonight, a guest from Agudath Israel, is a Rav of the city of Akim. He's a worldwide lecturer, lectures in the United States, he lectures in Europe, lectures in South Africa. He's a worldwide Marbitz Torah. It gives me great privilege to introduce to you tonight Rav Shimshon Pincus. Agudath Israel, Moronon, V'Rabbonon, V'Rabbaisai, and their families. I'm speaking tonight in the keynote session, which is reserved for Agudath Israel, and this evening, as a special expression of feeling and participation in the Matzah Eretz Israel, I was invited as someone who lives in Eretz Israel and to be included with the concept of Agudath Israel. Rashi says, Nahar HaGodol Nahar Pros. Rashi says that from all the four Naharas mentioned, it was the smallest. But Mishum Kvodim Shel Eretz Yisrael Nikra Godel. And for sure, in this gathering, I am the smallest, but Mishum Kvodim Shel Eretz Yisrael, and as a special expression of Avas Eretz Yisrael, Agudath Israel, I will be one of the speakers in this wonderful session, the Sasif L'Shem Shemayim, reserved to Agudath Israel. Let me first be Mekayim HaShlichus, regards, and say a little what's happening in Eretz Israel, although we live in a world that's so small and everyone knows, everyone sees. First of all, Toiva ha'oretz ma'od ma'od. That's how we have to begin, for sure. Baruch Hashem, there's an explosion in Eretz Israel, just like in America and all over the world, of yeshivas, of Beis Yankivs, of Chadorim. And to put in a word for Agudath Israel, Daf HaYomi is being learned in literally thousands of Batei Midrashim. There's a Beis Medrash in Bnei Brak that has all around the clock different languages. One Beis Medrash, more than 40 shiurim every single day. And Baruch Hashem, there's a wonderful Seiris of yeshivas bein Azmanim in Eretz Yisrael. And again, Agudath Israel, Chinuch Atzmoi in Eretz Yisrael. Toiva ha'oretz ma'od ma'od. And secondly, unfortunately, in Eretz Yisrael, to put it in very short words, Dam Yisrael Nishpach Kamayim. We're going through a terrible, terrible Holocaust. And as everyone knows, it's a situation that nobody in Eretz Yisrael, any place, going on a bus, walking down a street, wherever he is, can feel himself safe from the terrible sakona, the terrible anastami that's going on. And we would imagine that the people would be devastated and afraid. And this is the third piece of news that I would like to tell you. Baruch Hashem, people in Eretz Israel are tranquil, living a happy life. Baruch Hashem. And in Yiddish they say, man soll nicht geprüft werden, was man kann sich eingewinnen. As an example, let's say in this country, the situation of car accidents, Someone say, well, I imagine in America no one walk into a car. You walk into a car and you continue living. Now, I would like to say that although we wonder how really the people in Eretz Israel are so tranquil, the only people who are really afraid, really excited, are the parents who are screaming over the phone to the children not to go on the tiyulim, which they go anyways. And we wonder how they're so tranquil. But really, if we'll think about it with a practical eye and try to analyze rationally what's happening, really, the danger that's happening and what is erupting in Eretz Israel is not an issue of Eretz Israel. Eretz Israel is the heart of the world. And Chazal say that all pain starts from the heart. There's a Yiddish joke, they say, this is not a place for jokes. They say when a rooster crows, he closes his eyes. Why? He knows it by heart. He doesn't have to look into the siddur. And we can close our eyes and we know the story by heart. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us in such simple language, Zechor yemois olam, binu shnois dor vador. Look back into history. And history is still fresh in our memories. And we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, before major explosions and Rahman al-Islam Holocaust, we know that there's clear warnings. And Rabbi Say, in this gathering of Agudath Israel, and the people gathered here, which are the heart of Am Yisrael, it's maybe not something which we should talk openly, but in our hearts, we have to ask, are we not again in the beginning of the 1930s? Are we not facing a future that if we're not going to stop and not going to make a revolution, who knows where it's going to lead? Politically speaking, it has nothing to do with Eretz Israel. Because the fight is not an issue of any government against any government. It's the Arab nation with the Sinas Yisrael against the Jewish people all over the world. It has nothing to do with Eretz Israel. And we already see, whether it's in Paris or in London, and every gas station attendant who fills up our cars on Ocean Parkway and Ocean Avenue, or on Coney Island Avenue, or any place in this, he tells me I'm from Jordan, I'm a Palestinian, with a nice smile. And we know very well that all it needs is a match for the whole world to ignite. Hashem Yisbarach is again broadcasting a very familiar message. A message that in the history of the Jewish people for the last 2,000 years was over and over again with such clarity, and we saw it. And maybe the time has to come, Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'Kom, that we, and very, very clearly the people in this room, you're the heart of Am Yisrael, a gathering of B'nai Torah, of all of Am Yisrael, that maybe now is the time to get that warning, and that the future should not happen, and we should bring the Geula. And really, it's not an issue of just becoming a little better. We need a mapecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to wake up. And we live in a world that the colors are so clear. We see it in the papers today in colors. And we see the blood. And it's not a joke. And the message is so clear. And every one of us, we have to wake up and make a revolution. And Baruch Hashem, this is part of that revolution is this evening. And Agudath Israel and every Ben Torah. And this is one half of what I would like to speak this evening. And I feel this is really my message. But I'm going to continue, I'm not going to be long, is already my own opinion. How I personally translate what is the message that Hashem Baruch is giving us. And what area do we have to really make that mapecha? And I'm saying this to divide it, because again, it'll be my opinion. And just because I come from Eretz Israel did not make me a real Gadol of Israel. And everyone should ask the Gadol of Israel. And of course, we heard this evening, and we hear the Dvar Hashem. But let me tell you, since I'm holding the shofar, how I look at it. There's something very special about what's happening and how we can project the future. There's a special color to the situation today in Eretz Israel, which I think has really not, as I mentioned, not Dafka Eretz Israel. That the threat is not to a gathering, to a people, but it's very personal. It's a personal threat to people as a person. It's not, as I said, it's not to a certain country. And now we look back and we say, wow, in those 1930s, why didn't they run away? And we were chochem lachazman. And what a beautiful picture we see from Hashem. Hashem says, maybe it's not outsmarting me. Where's there to run to? The Muslim world is distributed over the whole, spread over the whole world. And someone says, I'm not a soldier. But that doesn't mean anything, because it's not an issue of a soldier. And of course, if we want to close our eyes, so when there's a chas v'shalom, a number 18 bus blows up, so we say, I don't go on the 18 bus, I go on the 15 bus. But we know how silly that is. And the message is that is a threat, a personal threat, to every Jew living on this globe, to his child. And it's something Hashem is talking in a very, very personal note. Not as a people, not as a tzibur, not as a country, but as a personal message to every single Jew in this world that has a neighbor down the street who is actually a Muslim and is dedicated, as we know, and as they announce very clearly. And I think I would translate it as follows. We live in a world, there are a lot of ways to define what's happening in our world. One of the ways of defining the lowness of our world, I once experienced such a feeling. I myself grew up in New York, and I don't get excited of tall skyscrapers. I was in one of the city in the United States, and I was in the downtown. Well, New York, isn't that beautiful, isn't that clean? It was a city beautifully built of steel and glass and marble. And even though I'm an American, I was looking, and they say it in Hebrew, mitpa'el. I was looking, and it was beautiful. Looking at the buildings, looking what what humanity built. And I was looking around, and who built this? And I put down my eyes, and I faced the people. I mean, you see it every day, and I see it also every day, but I was in a shock. gap between the humanity and what the humanity built. Here's what they made, and here's what they are. You see people that because you believe they're human, and you pass by a newsstand, you see the advertisement, you see the pictures. There's no way to describe it. Let's not talk about the schmutz, but there's just the subhuman. And here what they built, the technology, the computers, the whole world is now a palm. And here's what people build, and here's what people are. And I think that this is a message which penetrates also our Olam HaTorah. There's a terrible gap between Baruch Hashem, what we are building, what we are. We are building today, and we see it, yeshivas and koilim, and we see how, and it's no secret, all the yeshivas in the world are being supported by this gathering over here, by your monies and your Mesiras Nefesh. And we build wonderful, great things. But there's a different issue. What are we? Not what we do. What are we? As an example, if we were to find a clear definition of a person, of a human being, not what you build, not what you do, what you are. The Chovos HaLevavos doesn't say it in these words, but I think that's what he means. As an example, it's the way you daven Shemoneh Esrei. That moment of privacy, only you and Hashem. How real is that connection? How real is that dialogue? And Rabbi say, if that's the case, then it's bad news. And here, what we are in private life, what we see, what we read, again, not what we build, not what we do. I want to tell you, Rabbi say, in the early 80 years ago, between the First World War and the Second World War, a phenomenon happened in the New World. In the United States, in South America, South Africa, thousands of Jews came from Europe. And among them were Gidolim B'Tzadikim, B'Kiyim B'Shas. And they came to America, and they sat and learned, and they were Meiser Nefesh. Of course, many were not Meiser Nefesh, but many were Meiser Nefesh. And the second generation was wiped out. And this is a mystery that no one in the world can explain. And for sure not myself. But it's a phenomenon that we all witnessed. How thousands of the most wonderful tzaddikim, for some reason, forgot about their children. And Rabbi say, may I suggest that today, it's exact opposite. Today, the world of Torah, the world of the Haredisha world, all our mind is our children. Every one of us wants, will be Mesiras Nefesh. Our children should be pure, should be holy, should be tzaddikim. And there's so much talk about the videos, what's happening. And the children, and the children. And in that generation, all the concentration was on the adults, and the children were forgotten. And today, all concentration is on the children. But what's about the adults? What's about the father? He'll bring a newspaper into the house, and he'll read an advertisement, and he'll cut it out. His Yankele shouldn't see that schmutz. But I'm also a Yankele. I'm not a Yankele. I'm a Kodesh Baruch Hu's Yankele. But my children, and we do so much that our children should be clean, should be pure, should daven Shemoneh Esrei, should keep the original beautiful Yiddishkeit. And the whole world, Baruch Hashem, is exploding with this beauty. But the older generation, we're so weak. We allow ourselves, and we're in business, and we read, and our whole world. And again, not what we do. Now, I'm not speaking, chas v'shalom, epicursis, that it's not important what we do. Because if you don't do, then you cannot be. But there's a possibility you should do and still not be. Of course we have to do. We have to build, and whatever we build is not enough. But what's about what we are? And this personal message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us. I'm talking to you in person. Not as part of Agudath Israel. Not as part of the building of Torah. Not as part of even the Jewish people. But I'm talking to you that you live in number 19 of that street. And your children. There's a personal message. Where are you as a person in this story? And I'm not going to repeat it over again, but I'll tell you a beautiful story from the Chofetz Chaim. I met a granddaughter of the Chofetz Chaim. Nebuch, this is 15 years ago. She came from Russia, an old woman who was completely not religious. And I heard this, you can say over this story in my name, because I heard it from this woman, Kli Rishon. I heard it from her. How do I come to her? Because Reb Hillel Zaks, who was also a grandson of the Chofetz Chaim, went to visit his cousin, and he took me along, and she was a Merkaz Klita in Be'er Sheva. And she told us that when she was 18 years old, she ran away from home, and she went to the university. And I have to put into parentheses, there's no way any of us could imagine the fire that was happening those generations. And she told us, and I'll tell it in Yiddish, I'll translate it. Ich bin herein zum Zayden. I went to my Zayden, and here I have an 18-year-old Nebuch, a non-religious girl, talking to Chemtas Levavenu, Merkava of all Kedusha, Moreinu v'Rabbeinu ad sof kol hadoros. Our Rebbe, the Chofetz Chaim, who was then in the middle 90s. And she said, Ich hab gesagt zum Zayden, Zayde, was sitzt in der Finsternis? Geh raus auf der lichtige Welt. I can't even translate it. Zayde, Grandpa, why are you sitting in the dark? Go out to the light world. The beginning of the revolution of technology. Go out to a beautiful world. Hat mir der Zayde gesagt, as my grandfather told me, this is the middle of the World War I, the first airplanes, and they used to bomb. Out of the window they would throw a box of dynamite. Hat mir der Zayde gesagt, du siehst die Airplanen, you see those airplanes, min wird zu der Lunar zukommen. They're going to reach the moon. I heard this from this old lady, the Chofetz Chaim said this 80 years ago. Min wird zu der Lunar zukommen. Du siehst die Bombes, you see those bombs? Man wird machen Bombes, was wollen können aufreißen die ganze Welt. They're going to create bombs that will be able to destroy the whole world. Und das machen sie. That's what they make. Aber wir machen Menschen. We make Menschen. Hörst du? Wir machen Menschen. Menschen machen wir. And the Chofetz Chaim was talking about the secular world. And may I introduce that maybe the Chofetz Chaim Ruach Kodshay was always also talking to us. And Baruch Hashem, when we hear Rabbi Bloom tell us what Agudath Israel is doing, and B'chlal what the Charedish world is doing, and Baruch Hashem we reached the moon, and we're continuing. And Baruch Hashem we did things which are exploding in the whole world. B'kedusha u'v'tayra. And we will do kahena v'kahena. Oh, but what's about the mention? Mir machen mention. What's about the mensch in the private life? The mensch. once heard a word. The scientists, until around 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, even 20 years ago, everything they did with a telescope. What is, to see far away. Today, the beauty of science is the microscope. And Hashem Yisbarach, the last message will be, Rabbi Say, Baruch Hashem, the telescope, we're looking far. What's about the microscope? Because Hashem is going to bring us back, Ba'avo. It's going to bring us back to Eretz Israel. And it's not enough that we build beautiful things. Hashem has to give us that final kiss, that final moment of connection, personal connection to Hashem. That Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, Hazanas HaOlam B'chein B'chesed, that appreciation and the clarity of mind. And Hashem tells us, the first word Hashem tells the Jewish people is Lech Lechov, you me'artzecha meladcha beis avicha. What did Avraham Avinu do in artzecha meladcha beis avicha? And the final fight that the Bnei Yishmael are fighting with us today is that claim. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Kachna es bincha es yichidcha asher ahavta. And they are claiming everything is true besides that last word. It wasn't Yitzchak, it was Yishmael. And it's a fight with every Jew on this globe. It's not only a fight in Eretz Israel, but that's why it's talking about Eretz Israel, because Eretz Israel is the place we're going to back, that place of love. The Yichud is Eretz Israel. But who is the Bincha, who is the Yechidcha, who is the Shohavta as Yitzchak? And we finally have to prove, and this is something that cannot be done, because what's going on, every person on his own. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bincha, I'm a Klein Yingele. What I want for my children, I want for myself. Whether I'm 15 or 30 or 50 or 70. Yechidcha. My mind is dedicated to Hashem Yisbarach. The world with all its entertainments. Rabbi says it's not a Yiddish chasana. And when we will prove that, finally, as Yechidcha, that we are still your Ben Yochid, and you are our Echad, Asher Havta, and the love in our hearts is for your Torah and for your closeness, and everything that's going on, all entertainments, all fun, that's not where our love is. That'll prove as Yitzchak that we are the chosen people. And Hashem is talking to us in such clear language. There's blood being spilled, and Hashem should help, it should be the end. But the way humanity sees it, it's only a beginning. And everyone knows it. And we don't know where it's going to erupt. Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'Kom. The Jewish people fell 7 times. 7 means a lot of times. That's what it means in Hebrew. But the day will come that they're going to push us. And they pushed us over again and over again. And the Limpo. The day has come that we should not fall. And with this I conclude my Rabbi Say. I was introduced as a guest from Eretz Israel. I am a guest from Eretz Israel. The Vilna Gaon says, Arba Amas Shel Halacha has Kedushas Eretz Israel. When you walk into a Beis Medrash, it has Kedushas Eretz Israel. And let us face it, Baruch Hashem, this whole evening was dedicated to Eretz Israel, but we are in Eretz Israel. This convention hall in the middle of New Jersey is Eretz Israel. This is Arba Amas Shel Halacha. And you heard Agudath Israel speaking Divrei Torah, Divrei Halacha. It doesn't have to be Hilchas Shabbos. It could be Hilchas Hashkofa, Hilchas Yiddishkeit. We're in Eretz Israel. And this gathering is a gathering of Kiddushim Shamayim. And it's an inspiration to build and to do and to grow and to make a revolution all over the world. But let us also realize that this gathering is Eretz Israel, a place of closeness, of love to Hashem. And let us attach ourselves, every one of us in person, and get that personal message. And that prophecy, as we heard before, all of us are prophets. We talk about the future. The day should come, we should say, I was a Navi Sheker. It Baruch Hashem didn't happen. And Be'ezer Hashem, we should hear the Geula Shlema, B'mheila B'meinu Omen.